The air in the penthouse was cold enough to freeze breath, but the sweat on the forehead of the world's top cryptographer was real. Dominic Valenti, the most feared man in New York, stared at the antique vault on his desk. 25 experts from Zurich, London, and DC had spent 48 hours trying to crack it. They had failed. The empire was minutes away from collapsing. Then the door creaked open. It wasn't a savior. It was Aurora, the cleaning maid, holding a feather duster. She glanced at the impossible puzzle, sighed, and did the unthinkable. What happened in the next 60 seconds didn't just save $1 billion. It changed the underworld forever. The silence in the Valenti estate wasn't peaceful. It was heavy, suffocating, and tasted of metallic fear. It was 10 p.m. on a Tuesday, usually the time Dominic Valenti would be overlooking the city from his balcony, nursing a glass of 1945 Romane Conti. Instead, he was pacing the floor of his private study, his Italian leather shoes making no sound against the thick Persian rugs, but his presence screaming violence. In the center of the room sat the obsidian box. It didn't look like much to the untrained eye, a cube of black metal, roughly the size of a microwave, covered in shifting mechanical dials and etched with symbols that predated the Roman Empire. But inside that box was the Ledger of San Marino, a digital and physical hard drive containing the access codes to the Valenti family's entire offshore banking network. Dominic's father, the late Lorenzo Valenti, had designed it. Lorenzo was a paranoid genius who didn't trust banks, lawyers, or even his own son. He had set a dead man's switch on the vault. If it wasn't opened within 72 hours of his certified death, the internal mechanism would release a corrosive acid, dissolving the drive and erasing $40 billion of assets instantly. 71 hours had passed. "Explain it to me again," Dominic said. His voice was low, a dangerous rumble that made the three men standing near the desk flinch. Dr. Aris Thorne, a leading cybersecurity analyst from Blackstone Analytics, who charged $5,000 an hour, wiped his glasses nervously. "Mr. Valenti, the mechanism isn't just mechanical. It's biometric and chrono-locked. It relies on a sequence of logic that changes every time we touch a dial. It's mathematically impossible to solve without the original key, which we know was destroyed." "I didn't pay you $3 million for impossible, Dr. Thorne," Dominic said, stopping his pace. He turned his eyes, the color of cold steel, onto the group. The room was filled with the best minds money could buy. There was the team from Kroll Security, 2 master locksmiths who had cracked the safes of the Swiss National Bank, and a linguistics professor from Oxford named Higgins, who was there to interpret the symbols. They were exhausted, smelling of stale coffee and panic. "We have tried the brute force algorithm," Higgins stammered, pointing to a supercomputer humming in the corner, its cables snaking across the mahogany floor. "We have tried the linguistic cipher, based on your father's favorite poets. We have tried thermal imaging to see the tumblers. Nothing works. The box resets every time we make a mistake. One more wrong attempt, and the acid triggers early. We are stuck." Dominic slammed his hand onto the desk. The sound cracked like a gunshot. "Stuck? My legacy is in that box. If that acid triggers, the Russians move into the ports by morning. The triads take the logistics routes by noon. I will be a king without a kingdom." He ran a hand through his dark hair, looking at the digital clock on the wall. 10:15 p.m. Less than 2 hours remained. "Get out," Dominic hissed. "Sir?" Dr. Thorne blinked. "I said get out, all of you. Take 5 minutes. Get some air. Because when you come back in here, if you don't have a solution, you won't be leaving this house vertically." The threat hung in the air, undeniable and terrifying. The experts scrambled, gathering their tablets and charts, rushing out of the double oak doors as if the room were on fire. Dominic was left alone with the box. He glared at it, feeling a rare emotion: helplessness. He was a man who could order a hit in Tokyo from his phone in New York. He could crash a stock market with a whisper. But he couldn't open a metal box. The door creaked open again. Dominic didn't turn. "I told you to take 5 minutes, Thorne." I'm sorry, sir. It's Tuesday." The voice was soft, melodic, and trembling. Dominic turned. It wasn't Thorne. It was a young woman in a grey maid's uniform that was 2 sizes too big for her slender frame. She had messy brown hair tied back in a hasty bun, and her eyes, wide and amber-coloured, were fixed on the floor. She held a bucket of cleaning supplies and a feather duster. "Who are you?" Dominic asked, his irritation spiking. "Aurora, sir. I'm the night shift cleaner. The head housekeeper, Mrs. Galloway, told me that the study must be dusted by 10:30 p.m. regardless of meetings. She said the dust waits for no man." Dominic let out a harsh, incredulous laugh. "The dust waits for no man? My empire is crumbling, and Galloway is worried about dust. I can leave, sir," Aurora said quickly, clutching the bucket tighter. "I didn't mean to intrude." Dominic looked at the box, then back at the girl. She looked pathetic, poor, unimportant, exactly the kind of person his father had always ignored. "No," Dominic said, a cruel idea forming. He needed a distraction from his rage. "Come in, clean. Maybe watching someone do actual work will inspire those idiots outside." Aurora nodded, stepping into the lion's den. She moved quietly, almost like a ghost, starting to dust the bookshelves. But as she worked, her eyes kept darting toward the desk, toward the obsidian box. Aurora tried to keep her hands steady as she dusted the spine of a first-edition Dante's Inferno. She could feel Dominic's gaze on her back, burning like a laser. She knew who he was. Everyone knew. He was the devil of Manhattan. But Aurora had secrets of her own. 3 years ago, Aurora hadn't been cleaning floors. She had been a scholarship student at MIT, studying advanced theoretical mathematics and mechanical engineering. She was a prodigy, the daughter of a watchmaker who had taught her the language of gears and ciphers before he could teach her to ride a bike. But then, tragedy struck. Her father was diagnosed with a rare, aggressive cancer. The insurance refused to pay. Aurora dropped out. She took out loans. She sold everything. It wasn't enough. Her father died, leaving her with nothing but a mountain of debt and a black mark on her credit that made getting a corporate job impossible. Now she scrubbed toilets for the wealthy to pay off the sharks who knocked on her door every Friday. She moved towards the desk. The obsidian box sat there, mocking the room. Aurora knew that box. Not this specific one, but the type. It was a Valenti-style logic vault. Her father had once repaired an antique clock for Lorenzo Valenti years ago, and he had told her about Lorenzo's obsession with the golden ratio and musical scales. "Stop staring at it," Dominic said, his voice cutting through her thoughts. He was pouring himself a drink, his hand shaking slightly. "It's worth more than your life." "It's beautiful," Aurora whispered, before she could stop herself. Dominic paused, glass halfway to his lips. "Beautiful? It's a coffin for my future." "It's not a coffin," Aurora said, her eyes tracing the symbols on the dial. She recognized them. They weren't just ancient symbols. They were musical notations disguised as constellations. "It's a song." "No." Dominic set the glass down slowly. He walked around the desk, towering over her. "What did you say?" Aurora froze. She had spoken out of turn. Mrs. Galloway would fire her. "Nothing, sir. I need to dust the desk." "You said it's a song." Dominic grabbed her wrist, not painfully, but firmly. 25 experts said it's a linguistic cipher. You say it's a song. Why? Aurora looked up at him. Up close, he was terrifyingly handsome, with a jawline that could cut glass and eyes that held a storm of pressure. But she also saw desperation. "The symbols," Aurora said, her voice gaining a tiny bit of strength. "That one there, it looks like the symbol for Orion, but the spacing is wrong. It matches the spacing of a semitone on a bass clef. And that one? That's a rest. A quarter rest." Dominic stared at her. He looked at the box, then back at the maid. It sounded insane. But the experts had tried everything sane, and they had failed. "Show me," Dominic commanded. "Sir, I can't. I'm just the maid. If I touch it and it breaks, if it doesn't open in 90 minutes, it breaks itself," Dominic snapped. "And if you know something those overpaid suits don't, and you don't tell me, I will ensure you never work in this city again. Show me." Aurora swallowed hard. She set down her feather duster. She stepped up to the obsidian box. The moment her fingers hovered over the cold metal dials, the trembling stopped. This was her world. Not poverty, not debt, not fear. Just logic. Just mechanics. "The experts were trying to force the lock," Aurora murmured, almost to herself. She spun the first dial. Click. "But you can't force a melody. You have to play it." The double doors burst open. Dr. Thorne and the team of experts rushed back in, looking flushed and defensive. "Mr. Valenti," Thorne shouted, "we have a new theory. We believe the thermal expansion of the—" He stopped dead. The entire team froze. They stared at the scene before them. The billionaire Mafia Don was standing still, watching the cleaning girl in her oversized uniform handle the most dangerous device on the planet. "Get away from that!" Thorne screamed, lunging forward. "She'll trigger the acid. She's a maid, for God's sake!" "Stay back!" Dominic roared. He didn't look away from Aurora. "Let her work." "You're insane," Higgins, the linguist, gasped. "She's dusting it. She doesn't understand the complexity. One wrong turn." "Quiet," Dominic ordered. Aurora didn't hear them. She was in the zone. She remembered her father's voice. Lorenzo Valenti loved opera, specifically Puccini. The sequence on the box had 5 dials, 5 movements. Click. She turned the first dial to the left, aligning the Orion symbol with the center notch. The box hissed. "She's destabilizing the core." One of the Kroll security men panicked. Aurora ignored him. She moved to the second dial. She spun it 3 times rapidly to the right. Click, click, click. It was the tempo of a waltz. "She's just guessing," Thorne yelled, his face turning red. "Mr. Valenti, stop her. She's going to destroy the drive. Shut up." Dominic pulled a gun from his holster and set it on the desk. He didn't point it at anyone, but the message was clear. The room went deathly silent. Aurora closed her eyes. She placed her ear against the cold metal of the box. She listened to the internal tumblers. 1, 2. Pause. She needed the final key. The musical notation indicated a crescendo. That meant force, followed by a sudden release. She gripped the central dial. "It requires a Fibonacci sequence input," Thorne whispered frantically to his colleague. "She's doing a rhythmic input. It's suicide." Aurora took a breath. She spun the final dial hard to the left, then snapped it back to the right instantly. Clunk! The sound was heavy and final. The experts flinched, expecting the hiss of acid, the smoke, the destruction of the drive. Thorne covered his face. Dominic tensed, his hand hovering over his weapon. For 3 seconds, nothing happened. Then a soft, pneumatic hiss filled the room. Not of acid, but of air pressure releasing. The intricate etchings on the box began to glow a soft blue. The top of the obsidian box split down the middle, the gears retracting smoothly, revealing a small, velvet-lined compartment. Inside sat a silver hard drive, blinking with a steady, safe green light. Aurora exhaled, her shoulders slumping. She picked up her feather duster. She turned to Dominic, who was staring at the open box as if he were witnessing a miracle. She looked at the 25 experts, whose jaws were practically on the floor. Thorne looked like he was about to vomit. I think that's it, sir," Aurora said softly. "I'll just go finish the hallway." She turned to leave, grabbing her bucket. "Stop," Dominic said. His voice was no longer a rumble. It was quiet, stunned. Aurora froze near the door. "Sir?" Dominic looked from the open vault, which had saved his life and legacy, to the girl in the grey dress. He looked at Thorne. "Thorne," Dominic said calmly, "you and your team of 25 experts couldn't solve this in 48 hours. Thorne stammered. It was a fluke. She guessed. It's statistically impossible. She solved it in 58 seconds. Dominic cut him off. I timed it. Dominic walked over to Aurora. He didn't look at her like a maid anymore. He looked at her like she was the only valuable thing in the room. Who are you really, Aurora? He asked, stepping into her personal space. The scent of his cologne, sandalwood and expensive tobacco, filled her senses. Aurora looked down. Just the maid, Mr. Valenti. Dominic reached out and took the bucket from her hand. He set it on the floor. Not any more, he said. Thorne, get out. All of you, you're fired. And don't bother sending an invoice. As the experts shuffled out in a humiliated daze, Dominic turned back to Aurora. The danger in the room had shifted. It wasn't about the money anymore. It was about the mystery standing in front of him. You saved my empire, Dominic said, his eyes scanning her face. Now tell me what you want. Money? A car? A house? Aurora hesitated. She should ask for the money to pay off the sharks. She should ask for her freedom. But she looked at the open vault, and then at Dominic's eyes, which were looking at her with a burning intensity she had never felt before. I want a job, Aurora said. A real job. One where I don't have to wear this uniform. Dominic smirked, a dangerous, wolfish grin that made her knees weak. Done, he said. But be warned, Aurora. Solving the box was the easy part. Surviving me, that's going to be much harder. The transition from scrubbing floors to sitting in a glass-walled office on the 40th floor of the Valenti Tower was jarring. It had been 3 days since the incident with the obsidian box. Dominic Valenti didn't waste time. He had fired his entire forensic accounting team and replaced them with Aurora. Technically, her title was Executive Analyst. But the rest of the staff, men in sharp suits who had MBAs from Harvard and Yale, still called her the Maid behind her back. Rocco, Dominic's underboss, a man built like a vending machine with a neck as thick as a tree trunk, hated her the most. He stood at the head of the conference table, slamming a stack of files down. This is a joke, boss, Rocco growled, glaring at Aurora. She was wearing a simple black blouse and slacks Dominic had his assistant buy for her. She looked small in the massive leather chair, but her eyes were sharp, scanning the digital spreadsheets projected on the wall. We have a shipment of weapons missing from the port of Newark. The Colombians are breathing down our necks. And you want the girl who unclogs toilets to find the leak? Dominic sat at the other end of the table, spinning a gold pen between his fingers. He looked bored, but his eyes were alert. The girl who unclogs toilets opened a lock that stumped the CIA, Rocco. Let her speak. Rocco spat on the floor. It's been 4 hours. She hasn't said a word. She's just staring at the screen. I'm not staring, Aurora said. Her voice was quiet, but it cut through the room's tension like a wire. I'm listening? Listening to what? Rocco sneered. It's a spreadsheet, sweetheart. It doesn't sing. Actually, Aurora stood up, walking towards the projection. Numbers have a rhythm, and yours are skipping a beat. She pointed to a column of shipping manifest codes. Look here. Every 3rd Tuesday of the month, the fuel surcharge on the Neptune shipping line increases by exactly 0.04%. It's a rounding error. Most accountants would ignore it because it looks like a currency conversion fluctuation. So? Rocco crossed his arms. It's pennies. Who cares? It's not pennies, Aurora said, her confidence growing as the math took over. She grabbed a marker and wrote a formula on the glass wall. 0.04% on a shipment of heavy industrial machinery is roughly $2,000. But if you run a recursive algorithm, which I just did in my head, that error repeats across 500 shell companies linked to your logistics network. She turned to face the room. Someone isn't stealing the cargo, Mr. Valenti. The cargo is a decoy. They are stealing the shipping costs. They are overcharging you for fuel that doesn't exist across thousands of phantom shipments and routing the difference into a private offshore account. Aurora tapped the glass. Total loss over the last 5 years? $32 million. The room went silent. Dominic stopped spinning his pen. He sat up straight. 32 million. Yes, Aurora said. And the routing number for the offshore account? It's embedded in the manifest codes. It uses a binary cipher. She circled a string of numbers. If you decode this, it points to a bank in the Cayman Islands. A bank registered to... She hesitated. She looked at the tablet in her hand where she had just decrypted the name. Say it, Dominic commanded, his voice dropping to a terrifying whisper. It's registered to a holding company called Ironclad Solutions, Aurora said. Rocco's face went pale. The blood drained from his cheeks. Dominic stood up slowly. He walked over to Rocco. Ironclad Solutions. Isn't that the consulting firm your brother-in-law runs, Rocco? Rocco stumbled back. Dom, wait. It's a mistake. The girl is lying. She's playing with numbers to frame me. She didn't know your brother-in-law existed, Dominic said calmly. But the math knows. Dominic nodded to his two guards by the door. Take him, and find his brother-in-law. I want my 32 million back by sunset, or I take 32 pounds of flesh. As Rocco was dragged out, screaming and kicking, the other executives stared at Aurora with a mix of awe and terror. She wasn't just a maid anymore. She was a witch who could see their sins in the numbers. Dominic walked over to Aurora. He looked at the formula on the glass. Then he looked at her. You have a dangerous mind, Aurora, he said softly. I just hate messy variables, she replied, her hands shaking slightly now that the adrenaline was fading. Come with me, Dominic said, placing a hand on the small of her back. The touch sent a jolt of electricity through her spine. We're done with spreadsheets for today. Tonight, you need to learn a different kind of survival. Where are we going? Aurora asked. The Viper's Ball, Dominic said. It's the annual gala for the city's underworld. If you're going to be my right hand, you need to know the sharks before they eat you. The Viper's Ball was held at the St. Regis Hotel, a neutral ground where the 5 crime families of New York met once a year under a truce. No weapons, no hits, just champagne and veiled threats. Aurora stood in front of the mirror in the penthouse suite Dominic had assigned to her. She hardly recognized the woman staring back. The grey uniform was gone. In its place was a floor-length gown of emerald green silk, backless and daring, with a slit that ran up her thigh. It cost more than her father's house. Around her neck sat a diamond choker that felt heavy, like a collar. You look breathtaking, Aurora jumped. Dominic was leaning against the doorframe. He was wearing a tuxedo that was tailored to perfection, emphasizing the width of his shoulders. He looked like a prince from a dark fairy tale. I feel like an imposter, Aurora admitted, touching the diamonds. Everyone there will know I'm nobody. You are the woman who cracked the obsidian box and found the leak in my organization in under a week, Dominic said, walking toward her. He stood behind her, their eyes meeting in the mirror. You are more somebody than any of the trust fund wives who will be there tonight. He leaned in close, his breath ghosting over her ear. Stay close to me. Tonight isn't about math. It's about perception. If they see you are weak, they will attack. If they see you are mine, they will hesitate. If they see you are mine. The words echoed in Aurora's head as they took the limousine to the hotel. The ballroom was a sea of gold, velvet, and fake smiles. As Dominic entered with Aurora on his arm, the music seemed to falter. Heads turned. Whispers rippled through the crowd. Dominic Valenti never brought a date. He brought bodyguards. Aurora felt hundreds of eyes judging her. She gripped Dominic's arm tighter. Chin up, he murmured. Look them in the eye. You own the room. They moved through the crowd. Dominic introduced her simply as Aurora, offering no last name and no explanation. It drove them crazy. Midway through the evening, Dominic was pulled aside by the Don of the Russo family for a private conversation. He left Aurora near the champagne fountain. Don't wander, he warned her. Aurora sipped her drink, trying to look invisible. Well, well, If it isn't the little watchmaker's girl." The voice was like oil slicked over gravel. Aurora froze. She knew that voice. It was the voice that had haunted her nightmares for 3 years. She turned slowly. Standing there was Sebastian Cross. Cross wasn't a mobster in the traditional sense. He was a fixer, a loan shark on a corporate scale. He was the man who had bought her father's debt. He was the reason she had lost everything. He was a tall, skeletal man with pale skin and silver hair, dressed in a white suit that made him look like a ghost. "Mr. Cross," Aurora whispered. Her hands began to tremble. "I didn't expect to see you here, Aurora," Cross smiled, showing teeth that looked too perfect. "Last I heard, you were scrubbing toilets to pay off the interest on your father's mistakes. Did you find a rich sugar daddy to pay your tab?" "I work for Mr. Valenti now," Aurora said, trying to keep her voice steady. "I'm his analyst." Cross laughed. It was a cold, dry sound. "Analyst? Is that what he calls it? Does he know, Aurora? Does the great Dominic Valenti know that your father died, owing me $500,000? Does he know that I own the deed to your life? I'm paying you," Aurora hissed. "I send the payments every week." "Not fast enough." Cross stepped closer, invading her space. "Interest compounds, my dear. You know the math. But perhaps we can come to an arrangement." He swirled his wine. "I have heard rumors. Rumors that Valenti opened the obsidian box. Rumors that you opened it." Aurora said nothing. "I have a vault of my own, Aurora," Cross said. "A competitor's encrypted server. You unlock it for me, and I wipe your father's debt clean. You walk away free." "I won't betray Dominic," Aurora said. "Betray?" Cross raised an eyebrow. "Darling, you are already a betrayal waiting to happen. Does Dominic know that your father didn't just fix clocks? Does he know that your father built the triggers for the car bomb that killed Dominic's mother 20 years ago?" The world stopped spinning. The glass slipped from Aurora's hand and shattered on the marble floor. "No," Aurora gasped. "That's a lie. My father was a good man." "Your father was a genius who needed money," Cross sneered. "He built the mechanism. The Valentis don't know. But I do. Imagine what Dominic will do to you when I tell him that the woman sleeping in his penthouse is the daughter of the man who murdered his mother." Aurora couldn't breathe. The room was spinning. "Everything all right here?" Dominic's voice was like thunder. He appeared at Aurora's side, his hand instantly going to her waist. He felt her trembling. He looked at the shattered glass, then at Cross. Dominic's eyes narrowed. "Cross, why are you bothering my associate?" "Just catching up, Valenti?" Cross smiled, raising his glass in a mock toast. "Aurora and I go way back. I was just reminding her of her obligations." Dominic looked down at Aurora. He saw the terror in her eyes. Not social anxiety, but pure, unadulterated fear. "Aurora owes you nothing," Dominic said, stepping between them. "Oh, she owes me quite a lot," Cross said, "but we can discuss that later. Enjoy the party, Dominic, and do be careful. You never know what kind of history you're bringing into your bed." Cross walked away, disappearing into the crowd. Dominic turned to Aurora. He grabbed her arms, forcing her to look at him. "Aurora, you're shaking. What did he say to you?" "I want to go home," Aurora choked out, tears brimming in her amber eyes. "Please, Dominic, just take me home." "Not until you tell me what he has on you," Dominic demanded. "Is it money? I can pay him off." "It's not money," Aurora cried out, too loud. People turned to look. "Then what?" Dominic's face hardened. The paranoia that kept him alive flared up. "Aurora, look at me. Did he send you? Are you working for him?" "No." "Then why are you terrified?" Dominic shook her slightly. "Who are you, really?" Before Aurora could answer, before she could confess the horrible lie Cross had planted or the truth of her debt, a loud crack echoed through the ballroom. The chandelier above them exploded. Screams erupted. Darkness flooded the room as the power was cut. "Get down!" Dominic roared, tackling Aurora to the floor as gunfire erupted from the balcony. It was an ambush. And in the chaos, Aurora realized with a sinking heart, this wasn't just a hit, it was a distraction. Someone was trying to kidnap her. The chandelier didn't just fall, it detonated. Thousands of crystals, heavy as bullets, smashed into the marble floor of the St. Regis ballroom, sending a shockwave of glass shrapnel tearing through the silk and velvet of the city's elite. The sound was deafening, a thunder crack of destruction that instantly silenced the orchestra. For a heartbeat, there was a vacuum of stunned silence. Then the screaming started. Chaos erupted like a physical force. The darkness was absolute, save for the strobe light flashes of automatic gunfire erupting from the mezzanine balcony. Rat-tat-tat-tat! The muzzle flares illuminated the horrifying scene. Billionaires crawling under tables, wine glasses shattering, and the frantic stampede toward the main exits. Dominic Valenti didn't flinch. While others panicked, his world slowed down. This was the violence he had been born into. He hauled Aurora off the floor with a grip of iron. She was gasping, her ears ringing, her vision blurring. A shard of crystal had sliced her bare arm, and blood trickled down her skin, hot and wet against the cool air. "Stay low!" Dominic roared over the din, shielding her body with his own broad frame. He didn't pull her towards the main doors where the herd was running. He knew that was a kill zone. "Move to the service corridor!" Aurora stumbled, her high heels slipping on the champagne-soaked floor. She was a mathematician, a creature of logic and order. This was pure entropy. Every loud crack of a gunshot made her flinch violently. She was terrified not just of the bullets, but of the poison Sebastian Cross had just poured into her ear. "Your father killed his mother." The words bounced around her skull, keeping time with the gunfire. A bullet chewed up the parquet floor inches from her left foot, sending splinters flying. "Dominic!" she screamed. "I've got you," he growled, wrapping an arm around her waist and practically lifting her off the ground. He moved with terrifying efficiency, weaving through the overturned tables and hysterical guests. They reached the heavy swinging doors of the kitchen just as a second wave of shooters rappelled down from the balcony. Dominic kicked the doors open, throwing Aurora inside and diving in after her. The transition was jarring. The ballroom had been a place of shadows and gold. The industrial kitchen was a blindingly white world of stainless steel and fluorescent hum. Steam rose from massive stockpots, and terrified chefs were cowering in the corners. Dominic didn't stop. He dragged Aurora past the prep stations, past the hanging copper pans, deeper into the labyrinth of the hotel's bowels. "The loading dock is too far," Dominic muttered to himself, his eyes scanning the room like a predator. "They'll have the perimeter secured." Ew. He shoved Aurora behind a massive, solid oak butcher's block, stained with years of use. "Stay here." "What are you doing?" Aurora cried, grabbing his sleeve. Her hands were shaking so hard she could barely hold on. Dominic pulled a sleek, matte black handgun from a holster hidden beneath his tuxedo jacket. He racked the slide, the metallic clack echoing in the tiled room. He looked at the door they had just come through. "I'm buying us time," he said. The kitchen doors swung open. Dominic didn't hesitate. He fired 3 times. The shots were deafening in the enclosed space. A man in a tactical ski mask crumpled in the doorway, his weapon skittering across the tiles. "Clear out!" Dominic shouted at the cowering kitchen staff. "Everyone out the back! Now!" The chefs scrambled, fleeing toward the rear exit. But Dominic didn't follow them. He grabbed Aurora again, pulling her deeper into the kitchen, towards the massive walk-in freezers. He kicked open the door to a dry storage pantry, shoved her inside, and slammed it shut, locking it from the inside with a deadbolt before turning on her. The room was small, lined with shelves of spices and flour sacks. The air smelled of dry dust and oregano. Dominic backed her against a shelf. He didn't look like her savior anymore. His eyes were wild, dilated with adrenaline and a sudden, cold fury. The tuxedo was ruined, covered in dust and glass dust, but he looked more dangerous than ever. He pinned her there, his forearm pressing against her collarbone. Not enough to choke, but enough to trap. "Cross knew you," Dominic snarled. His voice wasn't a shout, it was a low, vibrating rumble that was infinitely scarier. "I saw him. I saw him whispering in your ear right before the lights went out. You were shaking. You wanted to leave." "Dominic, please, we have to go," Aurora begged, tears cutting tracks through the dust on her face. "Oh, we aren't going anywhere until you tell me who you are." Dominic slammed his free hand against the shelving unit, making the jars rattle. "Did you signal him? Is that why you opened the obsidian box? Was it all a setup to get inside my operation so you could hand me over to him?" "No, I swear, no," Aurora sobbed. "Then why were you terrified?" Dominic demanded, leaning in, his face inches from hers. She could smell the gunpowder on him. "Cross is a loan shark and a fixer. He doesn't talk to maids unless they owe him something or unless they're working for him. Which is it, Aurora? Are you his spy?" "I'm his debtor," Aurora screamed, the confession finally tearing out of her throat. Dominic froze. The pressure on her chest lightened slightly. "What?" Aurora slid down the shelves, collapsing onto the floor, burying her face in her hands. She couldn't hold it in anymore. The fear of death, the fear of Dominic, and the shame of her poverty collided. "He owns me," she wept, her voice broken and jagged. "He bought my father's medical debt 3 years ago, when my dad got sick. The insurance wouldn't pay. I borrowed everything. I maxed out cards. It wasn't enough. Cross bought the debt, $500,000. With the interest penalties, it's impossible. I've been paying him every cent I earn for 3 years just to keep him from breaking my legs." Dominic stared down at her, the gun lowered to his side. His chest was heaving. "Money? This is about money?" "I didn't want you to know," Aurora choked out. "I was ashamed. I didn't want to be another person begging you for a handout." "He threatened you tonight?" Dominic asked, his voice turning icy. "He wanted me to steal for him," Aurora said, looking up, her amber eyes wide and desperate. "He told me that if I didn't unlock a rival server for him, he would destroy me. He said he had information that would make you kill me yourself." Dominic went very still. The sounds of the firefight outside seemed to fade away, replaced by the thrumming of his own pulse. "What information?" Dominic asked. Aurora hesitated. She couldn't breathe. The air in the pantry felt too thin. "Tell me," Dominic commanded. He said. Aurora swallowed hard, feeling like she was swallowing glass. "He said my father didn't just fix clocks. He said my father built the trigger mechanism for the car bomb that killed your mother 20 years ago." The silence that followed was heavier than the ceiling collapsing. Dominic took a step back. His face, which had been flushed with adrenaline, drained of all color. It became a mask of grey stone. He looked at Aurora, really looked at her. He looked at her delicate hands, the hands that had unlocked his father's vault with such ease, the hands of a mechanical genius, the daughter of a mechanical genius. A memory flashed in Dominic's mind. The police report from 20 years ago, the bomb squad saying the device was intricate. Clockwork, a masterpiece of timing. "Is it true?" Dominic asked. His voice sounded dead, detached. "I don't know," Aurora cried, reaching out to grab the hem of his pants, but he stepped away from her touch. "My father was a good man. He fixed watches. He loved opera. But we were desperate for money, back then, too. Cross said he had proof. He said the Valentis didn't know. But he did." Dominic turned away from her. He walked to the door of the pantry and stared at the metal handle. A war was raging inside him. His instinct, the one that had grown over 3 days of watching her work, listening to her talk about numbers, smelling her hair, wanted to grab her, hold her, and tell her that Cross was a liar. But his survival mechanism, the paranoia that had kept him alive while his father and mother were slaughtered, screamed that it made sense. The talent, the poverty, the connection. It all fit. She was the daughter of the man who had orphaned him. He couldn't look at her. If he looked at her, he might kill her. Or worse, he might forgive her. and he couldn't afford either right now. "Get up," Dominic said flatly. Aurora scrambled to her feet, wiping her eyes. "Dominic!" He grabbed her arm, but there was no gentleness this time. He opened the pantry door and dragged her across the kitchen towards the heavy, industrial walk-in freezer. "Get inside," he ordered. "No, Dominic, please don't leave me." Aurora grabbed the doorframe, panic flaring again. "They're out there. They'll kill me." "They won't get past me," Dominic said, and the cold conviction in his voice was terrifying. "But I can't look at you right now, Aurora. I can't have you near me. Please let me explain." "There is nothing to explain," Dominic roared, his composure finally cracking. He shoved her into the freezer. The blast of sub-zero air hit her instantly, biting through her thin, torn dress. "Stay in there. Lock the door. If anyone tries to get in, who isn't Rocco or me, you don't open it. You freeze to death before you let them take you. Do you understand?" "Dominic," she whispered, her teeth already starting to chatter. He looked at her one last time. His eyes were black pits of pain and betrayal. He looked like a man who had just found a diamond, only to realize it was radioactive. "Lock the door, Aurora." He slammed the heavy insulated steel door shut. Aurora heard the heavy latch engage. She was plunged into darkness, save for a dim blue safety light. She was surrounded by hanging sides of beef and shelves of frozen produce. Outside the door, Dominic Valenti stood for a moment, resting his forehead against the cold metal. He took a deep, shuddering breath. Then he turned around. He checked the magazine of his Beretta again. He racked a fresh round into the chamber. The sadness evaporated from his face, replaced by the visage of the Devil of Manhattan. Sebastian Cross was out there. Cross had orchestrated the attack. Cross had threatened his property. And Cross had dared to dredge up the ghosts of Dominic's mother. Dominic walked toward the service entrance, his footsteps heavy and deliberate. He wasn't running away from the gunmen anymore. He was going hunting, and he would paint the St. Regis red before the night was over. Time lost its meaning inside the freezer. Aurora sat huddled on the metal floor, her knees pulled tight to her chest, trying to conserve whatever body warmth remained. The blue safety light cast long, ghostly shadows across the hanging sides of beef, turning the room into a macabre gallery. The cold didn't just touch her, it invaded her. It bit through the thin, torn silk of her ruined gown, settling deep into her bones until her teeth chattered with a violence she couldn't control. But the physical cold was nothing compared to the chill in her heart. Dominic's face, as he closed the door, haunted her. It hadn't been angry. Anger she could handle. It had been empty. He had looked at her as if she were a stranger, as if she were the enemy. "Your father killed his mother." The accusation circled in her mind like a vulture. Could it be true? Her father had been a gentleman, a man who cried at sad movies and spent hours fixing antique cuckoo clocks. But he had also been desperate. Poverty did terrible things to good people. She knew that better than anyone. Had he built a bomb to save his family, just as she had cracked a safe to save herself? Minutes stretched into what felt like hours. Aurora began to wonder if Dominic was ever coming back. Maybe he had died out there. Maybe he had left her here to freeze as punishment for a crime she didn't know was committed. Then the heavy latch clanked. Aurora flinched, scrambling back against the frozen shelves, her breath misting in the air. The door swung open. A wall of warm air hit her, followed by a large silhouette. "It wasn't Dominic. Let's go, kid," a gruff voice grunted. It was Rocco. The massive underboss looked worse for wear. His suit jacket was gone, his white shirt was stained with soot, and he had a nasty gash above his left eyebrow. He stepped in and offered her a hand that was the size of a catcher's mitt. "Dominic," Aurora rasped, her voice barely a squeak. "Is he—" "Boss is busy," Rocco said shortly, pulling her to her feet with surprising gentleness. "He told me to get you to the penthouse. Lockdown protocol. Nobody gets in or out until he says so." "Is he alive?" Aurora demanded, gripping Rocco's arm. Rocco looked at her, his dark eyes unreadable. "He's the devil, ain't he? The devil don't die easy. Come on. Underscore, 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 underscore." The penthouse was exactly as she had left it, pristine, silent, and luxurious. A stark, cruel contrast to the war zone they had just escaped. Rocco stationed 2 guards at the elevator and left Aurora alone. She washed the blood and dust from her skin in the marble bathroom, the hot water stinging her cuts. She changed into the simple clothes she had worn before the gala, her grey slacks and a soft sweater. She didn't want to look like a Mafia princess anymore. She wanted to be invisible. She sat in the high-backed leather chair, facing the floor-to-ceiling windows. The city of New York sprawled below, a grid of golden lights, indifferent to the violence that governed its underworld. She waited. 1 hour passed. Then 2. At 3:45 a.m., the private elevator chimed. Aurora's heart hammered against her ribs. She stood up, gripping the back of the chair. Dominic walked in. He looked like a fallen angel who had just climbed his way back out of hell. His tuxedo shirt was unbuttoned halfway, revealing a chest bruised and smeared with grime. His knuckles were raw and bloody. He smelled of copper, expensive scotch, and the acrid scent of gunpowder. He didn't look at her. He walked straight to the crystal decanter on the sideboard and poured himself a drink, his hand shaking slightly, not from fear, but from the adrenaline crash. He downed the amber liquid in one swallow and poured another. Only then did he turn to face her. The silence between them was heavier than the steel door of the vault. "Where is Cross?" Aurora asked, her voice trembling. Dominic swirled the ice in his glass. "Cross is no longer a variable in the equation." The finality in his tone sent a shiver down her spine. "Did you—" "I burned his operation to the ground," Dominic said, his voice void of emotion. "His servers are destroyed. His men are scattered. And Cross, he won't be collecting debts from anyone in this city ever again." He took a slow step toward her. Aurora held her breath. She searched his face for the hatred she had seen in the kitchen, but it was gone. In its place was a profound, exhausted intensity. "I had to be sure, Aurora," Dominic said softly. "Sure of what?" "The bomb." Dominic set his glass down on a side table. "After I finished with Cross, I took a detour. I went to a nursing home in Queens. I paid a visit to an old man named O'Malley. He was the bomb maker for the Irish syndicates 20 years ago. He inspected the wreckage of my mother's car." Aurora stopped breathing. She felt like she was standing on a trap door. "O'Malley has a photographic memory," Dominic continued, walking closer, until he was standing right in front of her. He remembered the device. He said it was crude, volatile. It used a mercury switch, not a clockwork timer. It was sloppy, amateur work. Dominic reached out, his hand hovering near her face before he let his fingers graze her cheek. He said a master watchmaker would have been insulted by the design. Your father didn't build it, Aurora. Aurora let out a sob, a ragged, ugly sound of pure relief. Her legs gave out, and she sank back into the chair. He lied, she whispered, tears spilling over. Cross lied. He needed to break you, Dominic said, his voice dropping to a low growl. He knew you were already drowning in debt. He knew you were terrified. He needed a psychological hammer to shatter your loyalty to me. So he invented the worst lie he could think of. He used my mother's death as a weapon. Dominic knelt before her, bringing himself to her eye level. The predator was gone. The protector had returned. I should have trusted you, Dominic said. But in my world, Aurora, trust is the quickest way to the grave. When he said it, the logic fit, the poverty, the skill, I panicked. I should have told you about the money. Aurora wiped her eyes. I was just so ashamed. I didn't want you to think I was only here for a paycheck." Dominic reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, black USB drive. It looked identical to the key for the obsidian box. "This is the master ledger from Cross's private server," Dominic said. He placed it in her palm, closing her fingers over it. "You stole it?" "I seized it," Dominic corrected. "Before I put a bullet in him, I had my team download everything. This drive contains the names of every person in New York who owed him money. Judges, cops, senators." He paused, his thumb stroking over her knuckles. "And you." Aurora looked down at the black plastic. Her nightmare was on that drive. "So, I owe you now. Is that it? I owe the Valenti family $500,000. "No," Dominic said. He took the drive back from her and tossed it onto the table as if it were trash. "I deleted your file." Aurora blinked, stunned. You just erased it?" "I didn't just erase it," Dominic said, a dangerous smirk touching his lips for the first time that night. "I bought the debt. I own the paper. I own the interest." He leaned forward, placing his hands on the arms of her chair, trapping her in his space. The air between them crackled with sudden, intense heat. "I don't want your money, Aurora. The math doesn't interest me." "Then what do you want?" Aurora whispered, her heart pounding in her throat. "I want the asset," Dominic said. His eyes roamed over her face, possessive and hungry. "You are the only person in the world who can unlock my vaults. You are the only person who can find a $30 million leak in 10 minutes. And you are the only woman who has ever seen me afraid and lived to tell about it." He moved closer, his lips inches from hers. "I'm not letting you go back to scrubbing floors. I'm not letting you go back to a cold apartment. You belong to the Valenti organization now. You belong to me." It was a demand, a contract signed in blood and adrenaline. It was dark, controlling, and terrifying. And God help her, it was exactly what she wanted. She didn't want to be safe. She wanted to be with the man who could burn the world down for her. Aurora reached out, her hand tangling in the hair at the nape of his neck. She pulled him closer. "I have conditions," she whispered. Dominic raised an eyebrow. "You're in a position to negotiate. I'm the only one who can open the box, remember?" Aurora smiled, her confidence returning. "Condition 1, no more secrets. Condition 2, I get a real office, not a broom closet. And condition 3, yes?" Dominic breathed. "Shut up and kiss me." Dominic didn't need to be told twice. He crashed his lips against hers, a kiss that tasted of scotch and survival. It was rough and desperate, the release of 3 days of tension and 20 years of loneliness. Aurora melted into him, the cold of the freezer a distant memory, replaced by the fire of the man who held her. The poor maid was gone. In her place sat the queen of the Valenti Empire. The 25 experts had failed, but Aurora had solved the hardest puzzle of them all, the heart of Dominic Valenti. And that, my friends, is how a genius maid checkmated the entire underworld. I honestly got chills when Dominic revealed he went to the bomb maker to clear her father's name. It just proves that even Mafia bosses have a soft spot for the truth. If you loved this story of hard karma and intense romance, please smash that like button. It really helps the channel grow. What would you have done if you were Aurora in that freezer? Would you have trusted him? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you don't miss our next story. We have a crazy revenge drama coming up next week about a billionaire who pretends to be a pizza delivery driver. You won't want to miss it. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next video.